I don't know how to operate it. What do you want me to
Turn
do?
it on?
I'm going to show you. All you have to do is press that button.
Okay.
It's on right
For
now.
record?
Yeah, it's on right now. So I'll just cut this off later, but when it's finished, all you have to press is that
Okay.
button.
Okay. All right.
Well, it's okay if you want. I was expecting you. Oh, good. Across the street? I do show you the same neighborhood. So, okay, we're good? Ready to start? Okay, so,
It's,
Is it on?
it's going.
I don't know how to work it, or I would say rewind it and we'll start over. I don't know how to edit it either. So, welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. Our topic tonight is nutrition. And so we have 30 minutes together, and I'm going to do my best to have you out of here at 6:45 so you can all go home to your families. I have a lot of information to share with you. I can promise you that there's something for everybody in this room to take home that they can do differently and implement in their lives. Now, for some of you, there may not be a whole lot of new information. There may be information that you've heard before, but sometimes we just need a reminder, or we just need to hear something enough times, or we need to hear it at the right time. But I promise there's something here that all of you can take home and do differently. And I would challenge you to do that as well. Now, the intention in holding this workshop, if you think about back to, for those of you who are patients, when you first came in and had your report with one of us, Dr. Alterman or myself, we told you two things. One was that one of our greatest roles is to act as teachers and to teach you how to do things differently in your life so that you never become dependent on us. So that's a piece of this. The other piece is that we hold the bar pretty high for ourselves in terms of what we want to support you in. Okay? So where we hold that bar for ourselves is that we want to support you in having the fullest expression of health that you can possibly have. So what you're putting in your body and what you're eating is a big part of that. So it kind of rolls into what we consider to be the chiropractic lifestyle. So chiropractic is much more than just an adjustment that you receive on the table. It's a lifestyle that supports what it is we're trying to accomplish here in the office. So this is one component of that, one piece of that. So I want to reference, is anybody familiar, oh Jan, I don't even have a mouse or anything.
Oh gosh.
Is anybody familiar with the Okinawa study? I've heard of that. Okay, it was done, oh, Jan, I might need your help out here. It took place in, I want to say the 90s. And there were a couple of researchers, I believe they were even brothers, and they got really intrigued by some statistics that they saw playing out in Okinawans. So what they found was that Okinawans have more centenarians, more people that live to be 100 and beyond, per capita than any other culture around the world. So it doesn't have anything to do with numbers. It's if you take 100 Okinawans and 100 Americans, more of them will make it to 100 than of us. So they started investigating that and studying what are the factors that allow that to take place. So they looked at diet and nutrition, they looked at activity level, they looked at stress, and of course in all of those things they tested way ahead of where we as Americans did. But if we put that together with, we know that their nutrition, their stress levels, their activity levels allow them to live to be 100 and beyond, and they live to be 100 and beyond healthy and active and vibrant. Put that little piece of information together with, we know that, again, in our country, most of the top 10 causes of morbidity and mortality, death and disease, are things like heart disease, lung disease, diabetes, things that we have a huge impact on based on our lifestyle choices. So there's so much that we can do to impact our health outcomes if we just choose to, if we have the knowledge, and then we choose to implement that knowledge. So if we tend to be a very crisis-oriented society. So when we're in crisis, we'll make all kinds of change. Okay, if you get a heart disease diagnosis, you're probably going to make some change. Or if you get diagnosed with diabetes, you're probably going to make some change. But where we really fall down is, okay, I'm healthy today. What are the steps that I need to take to make sure that 10 years from now I'm healthy and 20 years from now I'm healthy? Because that's where we can make a difference, is being very proactive and looking forward. So this information is information that I would love to see you take and play out in that way. Okay, so here we go. So our topic is optimal nutrition for vibrant health. It's going to come in like this. So we're going to talk about a couple of different things. The first one I'm just going to barely touch on, but I'm here at the end if anybody wants to explore this further. It's detoxification. Detoxification is something that all of us in this room can benefit from unless we've done it in the last 6 to 12 months. We live in a very toxic society. We eat foods that have pesticides on them. We breathe polluted air. You know, our grass is treated with chemicals. We use household chemicals that are toxic. All these things are stored in our bodies, in our liver, in our fat cells. So detoxification is the process of cleansing the liver, cleansing the insides, and getting rid of that stuff. Like I said, I'm not going to talk about it now. I would love to, but we have a program here that is a liver detox in conjunction with a 3-week elimination diet where you eliminate the 9 most common food allergens. And after eliminating them for 3 weeks, you introduce them one at a time to see if you're having any food sensitivities. Food sensitivities can show up as headaches, fatigue, digestive disturbances, constipation, behavioral disturbances in children, all kinds of things. Okay, so if that sounds like something you'd like to explore, then stay afterwards and we'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like and how you might want to implement it or when, because you really need to carve out the time. The other things we're going to be talking about are healthy food choices, and that's going to be the do's and don'ts, and then nutritional supplementation. Who needs it? Who needs it? So just referencing again briefly the detox. This was a study that was done on the umbilical cord blood of infants. So that's blood that they share with their mothers, but it's blood that's circulating through the baby's system. They identified 287 contaminants. 180 of them were carcinogenic. So that means that in the womb, that's the extent of carcinogenic substances that babies are being exposed to. Going back to detoxing and lifestyle choices and that type of thing. Okay, so moving on. Healthy food choices. Okay, so here are our topics. Living foods versus non-living foods. Does everybody know what I mean when I say that?
From the earth or not from the earth?
Yeses and nos, that's a part of it. Living foods versus non-living, we'll come back to that. Foods to eat with caution, and then foods to avoid altogether. So living versus non-living. I apologize, I didn't realize that it said this way. Living versus non-living. So living foods are literally foods that are in their natural state. So it's an apple that's come off of a tree and hasn't been processed. Nothing's been done to it. So living foods have not been cooked, processed in any way. They can be dehydrated, so it really means that they haven't been heated to high temperatures. As long as they haven't been heated to high temperatures, they retain all of their natural enzymes, so they're most vibrant. You're going to get the most out of them. So living foods would be things like raw fruits and vegetables, or dehydrated, and nuts and seeds that haven't been cooked, so raw nuts and raw seeds. They're the most vital, vibrant foods that you can eat, and you can't go wrong with them. You can't eat too much of those foods unless they don't sit well with your body, unless you have some food sensitivities to them. All of us can benefit from incorporating more live foods into our diets. A simple way to do this is to make sure that you have something living at every meal. Okay, so that can be as simple as having fruit with your cereal in the morning, or having a fruit bowl with some yogurt, or having a small salad with your lunch. But it's really easy to have something fresh and live with every meal. And it's a small step, okay? But it's an easy step. So live foods, raw fruits, vegetables, grains, and seeds, along with, I said that wrong, fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds, along with your whole grains and legumes, should be your staples in your diet. Those are all the foods that you just can't go wrong with, okay? Then, incorporating your lean proteins, lean meats, white meats, and pork is not a white meat, no matter what they say in the commercials. What are they saying, the new white meat? It's not, it's red meat. Yeah, it's red meat, it's not white meat. So lean white meats, fish, which we'll come back to, because there are lots of things to know about fish, of course. Some dairy is okay, some dairy, as long as it's not a staple, and eggs. But those first 6 things that I mentioned should be your staples. Okay, those are the things you can't go wrong with. Those are the things that are in their most natural state. So when you're in the grocery store and you're in the middle aisles that go down the middle of the store, what kind of food is there? The processed packaged prepared foods. So they're more likely to have chemicals in them to extend shelf life, and they've just been modified. They're not in their natural state. So you can't avoid those aisles, and that's where your grains and beans are, but you want to minimize what you get from those middle aisles and shop around the outside of the store as much as you can, because that's where the live food is. Okay, the stuff that's going to go bad eventually or in a short period of time, that's the live stuff. So you want to do more of your shopping around the outside, less of your shopping in the inside of the store. Okay. What else do I have here? So foods are considered live as long as they're not cooked at more than 118 degrees. There's actually a range of about 118 to 130, but that's where dehydrated foods are cooked at really low temperatures, so they're still considered live and the enzymes are still living and vibrant. So you can get away with all of those foods. What else do I have here that I want to comment on? I think we covered it all. So those are your living food choices. So we talked about, don't read this just yet, we talked about fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, grains, legumes. That's a vegetarian diet, right? Now I'm not saying that everybody has to be a vegetarian, but if those are your staples and you eat small quantities of the other forms of proteins, there are huge benefits to that. So this is just one. This is a study comparing meat eaters, vegetarian women, with non-meat eaters. Meat eaters with vegetarian women. And this is looking at bone loss. And this is Dr. Dean Ornish. Everybody knows who he is. He's a big heart guy, a medical doctor. Found that vegetarian women who've been vegetarian for 20 years or longer, had 18% bone mass loss. Meat-eating women had 35% bone mass loss. So there's some variable in that. Now, it may not be strictly the vegetarianism. It may be lifestyle choices in general, but there's some aspect of that that's working. It may be that the vegetarian women made better choices overall. I don't know that that variable was considered in this, but I do know that that was one of the outcomes of the study. So here we're going to move on to foods to eat with caution. And there are a couple of red flags here. Does anybody recognize this? I didn't either until I went to research it. This is the irradiated symbol. Do you know that some of our food is irradiated now? Yeah. So it's kind of like, it's the equivalent of pasteurization. So pasteurization is used on liquids. It's heating liquids to a high temperature to kill off microbes. That's what irradiation does. It kills stuff. So it's used in meats, I know. I'm not sure exactly what other foods. I'm familiar with it being used in meats. So irradiated foods are hit with the equivalent of 10 to 70 million x-rays. So it's a ton of radiation. So at this point, I have this under foods to eat with caution because there's not a lot that's known about it. But for me and my family, if there's not a lot that's known about it, I don't want it. Because we just don't know. What happens when we irradiate foods and what are the long-term effects? Who knows? So if you see that symbol, it means that your food was zapped with radiation. So you might want to avoid it. Okay? The other one, and I don't have a symbol because there's not one, would be GMO foods. Does everybody know what that GMO? Genetically modified. Okay? Now, genetically modified foods don't have to be labeled. Okay? So that's really tricky. Now, if it's labeled USDA organic, if it's organic, it can't have genetically modified foods in it. So that's one way to know that you're not eating GMO. Eat organic. Another place that gets really tricky is nearly all of the corn and soy in this country are genetically modified. corn and soy are in just about every processed food that you could eat. Okay, so if you're eating processed foods, you're getting some genetically modified corn. But on the whole, if you're buying corn or corn products, or you're buying soy or soy products, and you look for organic, then you know you're pretty safe as far as not GMO, not eating GMO. Okay, so GMOs don't have to be identified, but buying organic assures that you're not eating GMO food. Does that make sense? You follow? And again, soy and corn are the two biggest culprits of that, the two biggest things to watch out for. Now, other foods to eat with caution. Everybody knows the story about fish now, right? You got to pay attention to your fish. Fish is your best source of omega-3s. You know, the fatty acids that your body needs for lots of things. It's good for your joint. They're good for your joints. They're good for your brain, heart function. They're in fish. Well, the problem with fish is our waterways are polluted, so now our fish is polluted, so you got to be careful about your fish choices. There's actually, I was trying to print this, and I apologize, I wasn't able to, but there's a website, Environmental Working Group, and they are really good about keeping us up to date. So they have a wallet card for everything. They have a wallet card for fish that you take with you to the grocery store, because it shows you what's highest in mercury, what are the things you want to avoid, what to eat less of, how often it's okay to eat them. Like canned tuna is really bad. Canned albacore tuna is really high in mercury. It's healthy otherwise, but if you're eating a lot of it, you're probably getting too much mercury in your body. So it even tells you, like, how often can you eat canned albacore tuna, based on studies that have been done on the mercury levels in these fish. So Environmental Working Group, and I've got a slide at the end of this, but it's EWG.org. So they have a wallet card for fish, mercury in fish, and what's okay to eat and what's not okay. They also have a wallet card for what they call the dirty dozen in produce. Okay, so those are the most pesticide-riddled forms of produce that you can buy. So they're the things you want to try to buy organic if you can. So if you go to that website, you can find those lists to carry with you to the grocery store. And then dairy is the other thing that I have in here. Dairy is one of those things. The dairy's not bad, but it is over-consumed in our country. Children grow up drinking glassfuls of milk, and it really is a staple. And the purpose of dairy is to sustain baby cows. It's not to sustain baby humans. Okay, so when it becomes a staple in our diet, it's the most common food allergen. Okay, more of us are sensitive to dairy than anything else. And again, it's one of those things that you may not know if it's a daily part of your diet because of the way it shows up. It's not like you're going to necessarily go into anaphylactic shock because you have a food sensitivity to dairy, but it might be causing all kinds of symptoms. So it's just one of those things to pay attention to, watch out for. There's lots of good alternatives to cow's milk. Goat's milk, actually most people tolerate goat's milk better than cow's milk if you want an animal source of milk. And then there are a lot of vegetable alternatives. Hemp milk is really good. Rice milk, almond milk, and then soy is at the bottom of the list because of the phytoestrogens, which is another conversation. But those are all alternatives to dairy and cow's milk and goat's milk. Any questions to this point? No questions about how does my baby get their protein or their calcium? No, that's okay. What's that?
Peanut butter.
Well, that's why nursing, I mean.
Yes, as long as possible, absolutely. So this is a study, this goes back to the irradiated foods. Studies of malnourished children in India showed chromosome damage after eating recently irradiated foods for just 6 weeks. Now once they stopped eating the irradiated foods, the damage went away, like the body healed itself. But if we're eating those foods continuously, the damage doesn't have a chance to go away. So that's just something to plug in there about irradiating our foods.
Are we going to be able to see that symbol pretty easily once we know what we're looking for?
I think so. Do you want an image of it to take with you as a reminder?
I mean, it's just like, will it be on the meat package on the label?
I don't buy meat, so I don't know.
Okay.
I have seen it. I think when I first came across this, I went to the grocery store to see if I could see it.
See it, okay.
But now you know to look for it at least. And I do think that it wasn't readily, like I had to look for it. Now that you say that, but that's been about a year ago, so I don't know if that's changed. So I swear I'm not pushing vegetarianism, I'm just putting information out there. But this is when compared to nursing mothers who don't eat meat, how much more pesticide contamination do nursing mothers have who eat meat? So vegetarian women versus meat-eating women, contaminations in their breast milk. The point here is only about the contamination, the pesticide contamination. So do they have 5 times as much? 10 times as much? Does everybody get the question? 35 times as much. How much more pesticide contamination is in the breast milk of meat-eating women? See?
I'm gonna go with 10, but I bet it's 35.
It's 35, yeah.
I'd like to think it was like that.
So, this brings us back to, if you're gonna eat those white meats, try to buy organic. I know it's not always feasible in the budget, but if you can, do. Because a lot of junk goes into this stuff, and it shows up here. Okay? Okay, so our last little topic under food choices is foods to avoid altogether. And I have a feeling with this group, because you seem to be pretty knowledgeable, most of this is familiar, but maybe this is just a good reminder for you. So foods to avoid altogether. At the top of my list is artificial sweeteners. Does anybody have any questions about why that would be at the top of my list?
Tell me so I can tell my husband.
Okay. Now, I speak pretty strongly about this, and I once had a diabetic woman in the audience, and obviously there are exceptions to everything. But as a rule, in my household, artificial sweeteners are considered poison. I'd much rather my kids have, be loaded up with sugar than artificial sweeteners. So, aspartame is methanol. Oh, what did I do? Aspartame is methanol. Turns to formaldehyde in your body. That's a reason to not have that, right? That's aspartame. And I don't know which one is what color. I know there's pink and pink and blue.
Aspartame is blue.
And there's one other color. Aren't there 3?
Yellow is
Yellow.
yellow.
I don't know. I don't know what's what. Splenda is sucralose, which has been associated with
yellow.
shrunken thymus gland, enlarged liver and kidneys, atrophy of lymph tissue, decrease in red blood cells, and more.
Can I get a printout of that to give my mother-in-law?
My notes.
She drinks Diet Coke like it's gone out of style.
Oh,
With Splenda.
right.
Diet Coke.
Right. You can just Google it and find. I don't have the study here, which I should. I don't have the resource here. That information is readily available. So, if there are people who can't tolerate any sugar, and they look for alternatives to that, but for the average person that thinks that sugar is bad for them, or, oh, maybe this will help me lose a little bit of weight, it's not worth it. It's really not worth it.
What about the new one that's out, Truvia? Anything about that?
Not stevia? What is it?
Truvia?
I don't know Truvia. Is it an artificial sweetener?
They all advertise that they're natural, even aspartame.
Right.
It's got the natural protein in it, though.
Right.
The
I'll have to, I don't know.
Package. We have some in our house. Some
You
of it.
Truvia?
Yeah, Truvia.
Gosh, I'm out of the loop.
Well, I was also thinking about what Dad uses that, what's it called? It's that syrupy stuff called
Agave?
Agave.
That's another 30-minute conversation. So there are different perspectives about agave. From a raw foodist perspective, and that's a whole movement now, a whole way of eating. From a raw foodist perspective, if it's truly raw, which means it hasn't been heated at, over 118 degrees, and if it's minimally processed, then it's okay. The more processing, the more it's heated, the more refined it is, then the higher on the glycemic index, and the more your body reacts to it. There's still a lot of controversy around that one.
So is it better just to take like the raw brown sugar?
I think that, to me, raw brown sugar, honey, molasses, maple syrup, agave, they're all similar. Some are higher glycemic index than others if they're used minimally. Like, nobody should be eating a ton of any of this stuff, but if you're using a teaspoon of it to sweeten your tea in the morning, okay. That's fine.
But
So
that
some
would
of
be-
it has to do with quantity.
I was just thinking about the kids, like,
To me, any of
Tori likes
those.
the brown sugar.
Oh,
on her cereal.
okay.
But so that wouldn't be a lot. I mean,
Right.
it just,
And then that's a bigger conversation,
Right.
because then, what's taking place in the rest of the day, and
right, yeah.
so I'm okay with small amounts of sugar, and I'd much rather that than any amounts of artificial sweetener is the point,
Right.
except for fine white sugar. Okay, so that's the sweeteners. That's the it's still better than artificial white
Yeah,
sugar.
yeah.
So the sweeteners, MSG is another one that I have. I attempted to make a copy. I'll pass this around. I don't know that you can read it that well. MSG, monosodium glutamate, is in lots and lots and lots of processed foods, but you got to know what to look for in order to avoid it, because it's not always called MSG. It's called about 15 other things. So this, the top part of this, is all the other names that MSG is called. The bottom part is things that might have little tiny bits of it. So if you're going to pay attention to one part of it, definitely the top part. If you see those in a food, know that it has MSG. MSG is an appetite stimulant. So you know when you're eating foods that have MSG and you just want to eat more, like it feels addictive, that's why, because it's stimulating your appetite to want more of that food. So that's another thing to be avoided at all costs. It's been associated with stomach, or with complaints just that run the gamut: stomach cramps, diarrhea, headaches, chest pain, you know, that list goes on and on. The third thing on my list is trans fats. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail. Trans fats, they have to be labeled now. If a product has trans fats, you want 0. 0 can mean that it's like half or less than 1, but you want 0. No trans fats are okay in any food. They're usually found in baked goods and crackers and things like that. McDonald's French fries. At McDonald's, last I saw McDonald's French fries had 8 grams of trans fats. And 0 is okay. Okay. Just real quickly here, organ meats, you know, that's what filters and stores toxins in the animal, so you probably don't want to be putting that in your body. Organ meats, lunch meats, you know, processed meats that have nitrates and nitrates, artificial coloring, artificial flavoring, really, kids are really sensitive to those things. I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to shoot through this. The other part of eating is not just what you put in your body, but how you do it. So eating with intention is a big part of what your body does with the food that goes in. I was watching my 11-year-old the other day, and we were having pasta, which he loves, and he was shoveling it in, not even taking time to chew it. It was just going through like this, and his body's not going to get the most out of that food, whatever it is, if he's eating that. So intentional chewing is, or intentional eating is really taking the time to eat slowly, chew properly, you know, allow your digestive enzymes in your stomach to do their work, allow your teeth to do their role in digestion, so that your body really is breaking it down and extracting everything that it possibly can from that food. That's kind of what all this is. You don't want to drink large amounts of water or fluid with your meal, because then you're diluting your digestive enzymes. So I'm not saying don't drink, but don't drink a lot with your meals. Things like TV and computer tend to distract us, and then we're not really paying attention to how we're eating because we're focused outwardly. One other thing about eating, stress shuts down your digestive system. Okay, so stress puts your body in a fight or flight mode, which is preparing it to run or fight, which means your digestive system shuts down. So if you're eating when you're under stress, do you think you're digesting your food properly? No. So sometimes watching the news while you're eating may not be such a good idea, or reading the newspaper. Those are stress inducing. They really are. Your body's going to react. Having a conflict resolution meeting over lunch is probably not a good idea. So eating times, meal times should be peaceful times, so your body can really digest and assimilate the food. All right, the last thing I want to touch on is nutritional supplementation. Is it for everybody who needs it? There was a time in my practice when I thought, eat good enough, eat the right kinds of food, you don't need to supplement your diet. I feel differently about that now. Now there's research to substantiate it. Even the AMA is now saying every adult needs to take a multivitamin. The AMA, of course, when it comes to something like that, is usually lagging way behind, but they've taken that stand. Every adult needs to take a multivitamin in order to help prevent disease. The studies that played into that decision had to do with comparing nutrient content in food with nutrient content in food 30 years ago. So I think the year was 72, and they measured things like broccoli and collard greens. And our food is not nearly as nutrient dense as it once was. I think we've lost about 30%. Nearly half the calcium and vitamin A in broccoli have disappeared. So we're getting half the calcium and A from broccoli that we did 30 years ago. So we might be eating the same foods, but we're not getting as much out of them. So that's where, for me, nutritional supplementation does come in. eat a really good diet, expect to get everything from your food that you need, bless you. But it's probably a good idea to take a supplement just to kind of top it off. A supplement should never be a one a day. Okay, taking a one a day vitamin like Centrum or some of those is the same as eating one meal a day and expecting that to meet your nutritional needs for the day. So supplements, any kind of nutritional supplement like a multivitamin, multimineral, should be taken throughout the day. Just like we eat 3 to 5 meals a day, that's how your supplement should be. A little bit throughout the day to maintain your blood levels. Okay? So multivitamin, multimineral, because of the whole fish issue, if you're not getting enough fish or flaxseed or walnuts, good sources of omega-3s, you probably would do well to supplement with omega-3 fatty acids, fish oils, whatever you want to call that. That's a good supplement. Vitamin D is another one that we don't get enough of. You can get it easily by going outside every single day. But if you don't do that, 15 minutes of exposure a day is all you need. That means no sunscreen. But if you're not getting that, vitamin D supplement is a good idea. The recommended dosage varies widely from 1,000 to 5,000. And right now it's still out there in discussion. And definitely the 400 I use, that's the RDA, is way, way, way below what we need. That's what we need. That's what we know. I think that's the only thing I have, the only information that I have about supplementation. We do carry Thorne products, which they're really good products. That's why we carry them. And we stock certain things like a women's, based on age, and men's, the omega-3s. We don't keep the whole line in, but we always have those available. So if you want to do some supplementation with the products that we carry, we're happy to provide those for you. So I am going to close now. I'm going to put resources up here if anybody wants to write these down. Here's come on. So that first one is the wallet cards, Environmental Working Group. And they're just a wealth of information as far as I'm concerned. 7 Pillars of Health. This is a great book. He's an MD and he wrote this book and he touches on 7 different, specific issues or aspects of health. It's a very biblically based book. So if that resonates and works for you, you'll love it. You'll love the book. And then just some other. Food Matters is a video about our food production industry. Mercola, Dr. Weil, AJ Chiropractor. And then this was for mercury content in fish as well. If anybody wants to write that down. Does anybody have any questions? Do you know how to hit the off button?